Oh my god, it's already summer movie season, and of course I'm starting it out with a horny, perverted, and gory Cronenberg body horror film. Crimes of the Future is Cronenberg's return to form, at least that's how it's being advertised. To my understanding, this is Cronenberg's first film to utilize his unique style of body horror since the release of Existenz in 1999. Although Cronenberg has continued to make movies since that time and tends to get one out every few years, he's mostly moved away from horror, but many of his films are still very much worth checking out. Crimes of the Future utilizes Cronenberg's body horror aesthetic, but isn't exactly a horror movie. It takes place in a world where physical pain is a thing of the past, people are growing new organs that need to be removed, and surgery is the new sex. No kidding, this is a movie where everyone has a surgery fetish. 99% of this film is just characters explaining how their future works, which I could see a lot of people getting easily bored with, but I was fascinated by it. Everything about the film is presented in such a matter-of-fact way. It's like getting a lecture on a topic that's completely alien to you. There are some darkly comedic aspects of the film that never feel like they're trying too hard. This film manages to be very funny at times, while still being incredibly subtle about it. Whether it's Viggo Mortensen wearing a black cloak and crouching like he's Elle from Death Note, Kristen Stewart's incredibly twitchy performance, or the breakfaster chair, it very much feels like Cronenberg is aware of how ridiculous the whole thing is, but he still treats it with a matter of respect that convinces me he knows exactly what he's doing. This movie is made for the true sci-fi nerds, the ones that care more about the concept over the story or characters. I don't think this movie is anything groundbreaking. It felt to me like a culmination of 90s Cronenberg films like Naked Lunch, Crash, and Existenz all merged into one. I like this better than Existenz, but probably not as much as Naked Lunch or Crash. Still, I really enjoyed the film. It's one of the better movies I've seen this year, but this is coming from someone who's a big Cronenberg fan. I'll give it a thumbs up. Just know its target audience will be very niche. Don't go into this expecting a horror movie, and don't make this your introduction to Cronenberg. Probably start with something like The Fly or Videodrome. The next movie I watched was one that technically released last year, but just got a wider release on streaming this year. That being Phil Tippett's long-awaited, so-called masterpiece, Mad God. Phil Tippett may not be a name that everyone will know, but you will no doubt recognize his work as the stop-motion animator behind much of the original Star Wars trilogy and the RoboCop movies. This is his chance to do a full stop-motion animated film. Well, I say that when the truth is this has been in development for over 30 years. Being a huge passion project of the director, and to be honest, it's a miracle that this thing even exists. And that makes it a lot more difficult to judge, seeing as this has been in production for so very long. This movie is a visual treat for horror fans. It's absolutely hideous, but in the best of ways. Unfortunately, that's pretty much all it is. I found there to be very little substance beyond the impressive visuals. This film is very abstract, and I can't tell if Phil Tippett had a strong idea for what it all means, and I'm just entirely missing the point, or if it was just a test to see if he could actually finish a nutso movie like this, and little more. I admire the dedication put into this, but I can't say I love the movie itself entirely. I've seen similar films to this in the past that feel far more comprehensible. The 1993 film, The Secret Adventures of Tom Thumb, is a good example, and I consider that one to be an underrated gem. It's not that I don't recommend this to fans of animation or horror, just that I wasn't a huge fan. I personally feel it didn't live up to the massive hype it had. I'll give it a meh. The next film I saw was the new Pixar movie, Lightyear, the movie Andy saw in 1995 that inspired his love for the character. Firstly, Andy has shit taste. And secondly, this movie ain't got nothing on Buzz Lightyear of Star Command, the Buzz Lightyear cartoon Disney wants you to forget for some reason. Now, even though I did grow up with that cartoon, I was still very open to seeing a new take on the character's origin. I very much like the concept of Buzz Lightyear being a piece of fictional media in another universe, and exploring how all of that ties into the toy from Toy Story. this movie's approach to Buzz Lightyear is much more grounded than I have come to associate with the character. I've always associated Buzz more with this sort of retro sci-fi action-adventure fantasy that's colorful and, well, fun. Think the opening of Toy Story 2 or the Space Ranger spin ride at Disney World. Once you get past the bizarre aesthetic choices, this movie is very okay. This here is a film with a lot of interesting ideas, most of which are poorly executed or just straight up not explained well. There was an idea early in the film revolving around Buzz's friend aging before his eyes, and he only gets to see her every 4 years. That alone could have been an entire movie, but nope, gotta have Zurg show up just so he can barely be in it. There's plenty of fan service in this movie, but it all feels awkwardly forced. They keep quoting things Buzz said in Toy Story, but the world the film creates feels far too distant from what we've come to know about Buzz Lightyear as a franchise based on those movies. There's a few elements from those films they actually retcon, and it really bugs me. If I were to write a Buzz Lightyear movie, the very first thing I would do is go back, rewatch the Toy Story movies, and take notes to make sure the movie takes everything Buzz has ever said about his fictional universe into account. There are some elements I really like about it. I enjoyed the film visually. I just kind of wish Pixar would have applied this more grounded sci-fi aesthetic to something entirely new rather than a Buzz Lightyear film. I could see this working as a video game, but that's a whole other topic of discussion. I did like Socks. I'm surprised that one of the few things I liked about this movie was the comedic sidekick, yet here we are. Socks aside, there was quite a lot of jokes in this movie, the vast majority falling flat on their face. This movie really felt like Pixar had an opportunity to do something new, but at the end of the day, the fact that it is a Pixar movie was its biggest detriment. I will say Lightyear has the best LGBT representation I've seen in a theatrical animated movie released in the US. It's unfortunate it has to be plagued in all this controversy with Disney removing a kiss and then throwing it back in just to cover up their ass. But I think it's a major step in the right direction. I really wanted to enjoy Lightyear, but overall, it's just nothing special. Not a bad movie, but it's definitely among Pixar's weakest films. I'll give it a meh. Up next, we have something much simpler, a Netflix sports drama called Hustle, starring Adam the Sandman Sandler. Adam Sandler tends to be pretty good in non-Happy Madison movies, so the fact that Hustle is a Happy Madison production is one of the most surprising things about it. This is not like the traditional comedic films we tend to get from that company. Rather, this is an inspirational sports movie about basketball. It's exactly the type of movie you've already seen at some point in your life. Everything about it feels overly familiar, yet it still manages to do its job in making you care about the characters and their struggles to succeed. Adam Sandler is great in this. I'm not saying he's good enough for an Oscar, but hey, if Will Smith could win an Oscar for King Richard, I mean, why not Sandler for this? The movie is predictable, but it's just a really feel-good sports movie, and sometimes that's all these kinds of movies really have to be. If you're just looking for something simple but fun to watch when you've got downtime, then I definitely recommend Hustle. I'll give it a thumbs up. And finally, we've got the grand return of Beavis and Butthead in their brand new feature-length movie, Beavis and Butthead Do the Universe. This is one of those movies that did not need to happen, but it did, and now we have to live with the consequences. What is there to say about this? It's a Beavis and Butthead movie. It's pretty much the same concept of their Do America movie, in which you take these two idiots and throw them into a very different genre of film and just watch them fuck up everything. This time it is set during a daring space mission until the two of them crash land on modern day Earth. Then it becomes a Beavis and Butthead interacting with the modern age movie, which they don't do a ton with, but some of the jokes they do get out of the concept are very funny. This is clearly animated via modern digital animation, and while by no means does it look bad, it doesn't look quite as appealing as the original, more sketchy look of the traditional method. I think these characters were just made to be drawn on paper. The movie is incredibly stupid. Some people will hate that, others will love it. Really, what it all comes down to is whether or not you already like these characters. I didn't quite enjoy this movie as much as Do America, but I did have a lot of fun with it. I'll give it a thumbs up because why not? So that's it for the movies I watched in June. I wanted to check out Elvis and Marcel the Shell, but fitting everything into 1 month is tough. But thank you again for watching, and goodbye.